Howdy folks, Tom Bubbly here. So I was going to move this direction of the channel to what became Model Rail Video, which I've done 2 videos for so far. It takes a bit of time to do that. But someone left in the comments of the last video that I recorded about Attic Aficionados, and I wanted to give some deeper background to Attic Aficionados because I've recorded a little audio about at the end of it in 2022. Attic Aficionados is basically 2017. But it dates back to this thing that I did called the Best Damn Podcast Ever, which was in 2007. And I've actually gotten the dates of these things organised. There's a lot of really strong negative stuff associated with this. This isn't a very positive tale. I mean, fans of Attic Aficionados are fans of Attic Aficionados, but I feel like I need to give it a full spectrum kind of discussion of it. My introduction to Brandon's work was probably from about 2001, and then I consumed his videos in the UK, and then I moved back to the US in 2004. No, 2004? Yes, 2004 I moved back to the US, and basically spent about a year looking for work, maybe about 9 months looking for work actually, it wasn't as that long. And through that period of time, I watched a little bit of MTV and kind of caught up on, Brandon's work, mainly through this thing called Viva La Bam, which was out then, which he didn't get writing credit on, but he was a recurring person with. So I was doing a podcast called The Best Damn Podcast Ever in 2007, and it was a fascinating podcast. You can go back and find it, Best Damn Podcast Ever. Blake Buck is just a genius. I think he's a comedic genius. William Miller, also very smart. And the third guy, whose name escapes me unfortunately in this video, pretty decent too. But I think Blake Buck is just brilliant. And the thing with Blake Buck was that I was able to do music. So basically for the 20 or so shows I edited on the Best Damn Podcast Ever, the end of each show is like a Tom Barbalet track, where I recorded music sampling the previous show and sampling the show. Basically, I edited the show in a podcast, and then I had about 3 to 5 days to record a piece of music with the audio from the show and my own musical takes on this. And I did this, I think, for about, I don't know, I feel like I did it for about 20 episodes. It might be that I actually did it for 10 episodes. Honestly, 2007 is a long time ago. I can't really remember anything. Aside from the fact that I thought, what these kids are doing, could be pretty well whipped into shape by what these other kids were doing in Westchester who were more my contemporary age. So I got in contact with the fellow whose name was Ray Kyon and his brother Art Webb. And Art Webb and I are still friends to this day. I mean, Art is someone who I consider still a relatively close friend. Occasionally get emails to. Someone who's been very intertwined in my life, very concerned about aspects of my life, and absolutely fascinated about certain things that I've done, and also played a D&D game with me for, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 years, basically. And yeah, so Art and I are friends, thankfully. His brother, Ted, friendly for a period of time, some correspondence. I think mainly I spoke to Art. I think there were a few occasions where Ted was in the kind of general vicinity and just hopped on the call while I was talking to Art, specifically. But, Ted is a brilliant scientist, and just, seemed really curious, and their father's relationship with regards to the whole thing was very curious as well, but we'll move all that aside. Don't necessarily want to talk about this history. So anyway, recording Best Damn Podcast Ever, got in contact with the folks who were based in Westchester, basically. Mainly Art and Ted. And then they had this friend, obviously Brandon DiCavallo, whose work I knew. He just seemed like a really bright guy. He called into my podcast, Model Rail Radio, I think in 2010. And that was the first interaction that I had with him seriously. Art Webb and his brother and Brandon were doing a podcast called Gamecastle, which basically was Art Webb's podcast. And I was really interested in that because I thought they could move it to video and they could basically take back some portion of their intellectual property, which had been completely removed from their experiences here. And I don't want to necessarily talk too much about, um, you know, that circumstance. But obviously that led into a variety of circumstances that came through Attic Aficionados. I mean, basically, Brandon doesn't talk about any of his prior work in Attic Aficionados. Um, and yeah, the whole thing is very strange. The whole thing is very strange that it started with the Best Damn Podcast Ever, fundamentally for my interest, working with a group of guys who basically I got pissed off with. I mean, I was editing shows and they were making incredibly lurid racist as far as I was concerned at the time. I just didn't want my name attached to it anymore. It was just ridiculous. They went for what I considered were easy laughs, basically, like just racism, which ironically I felt with regards to some of Brandon's work as well. But yeah, their stuff, I just didn't want to be editing it anymore. Like I put in my life basically into getting all the audio corrected, all the audio compressed, everything kind of digitally working together, and then getting this music piece in there. So really, I wanted to show that as an adjunct to these people, because I was probably at the time I would be at least a decade older than them, I would think, maybe in that kind of ballpark. And the distinction with obviously the folks in Westchester and the Best Damn Podcast Ever folk were the folks in Westchester were at least contemporaries of mine. They were roughly the same age. So that was a very different kind of communication. And that created Attic Aficionados for a short period of time. And it's something that I feel uh, it really represented a friendship, a very strong friendship that I thought was there with me and Brandon, and clearly mistaken. I mean, I think, my view is that he had a family, he had a life, he had a experience in Westchester, and I traveled across the US and saw some of that, and then the podcast ended. I mean, it's all very curious in that light. Would I do it again? Well, I don't know if the planets would never align to do it again. Was it an amazing alignment of a series of things at the time? Without question. Like, the whole thing was just, you know, part of this, legendary set of experiences that I've had up until now, which have just been amazing. And, meeting my childhood heroes and then meeting my contemporary heroes and working with them as equals. I mean, it's just stunning. So for me personally, yeah, it would be nice to, I mean, I feel, I'm lucky to have a friendship with Art Webb. And that's the thing that's maintained through all of this is just a very thankful friendship with Art Webb. Um, and there's a lot of deeper stuff, which I'd love to put in writing. I mean, I'd love to, write more about this in later life. But for now, there's not a lot I can say about that. Just not a lot. Not a lot. Anyway, so I thought these well, cameras, face to camera, whatever the term is now, the kids today call this thing, I thought would be useful to put out on the Barblay YouTube channel, as it seems to have a group of people who still think that I'm recording Attic Aficionado somehow, mysteriously. Um, but yeah, you've got to think of it also in terms of just the kind of deltas in ages and the hunger. Like working with hungry people who are really interested in getting something out there is always exciting. Like when you have age disparity, it creates all this additional stuff. Um, I know William Miller is doing okay. I think Blake Buck's doing okay. I wish the third gentleman escaped me. I'm sure he's probably doing okay as well. I mean, he actually lived in Las Vegas for a period of time. I think. I think he lived in Las Vegas. I'm pretty sure he did. He might still live in Las Vegas. I need to look up Blake Buck again and see what on earth he's going on with his life. Yeah, Blake was one of these people where I think he could have been a really brilliant comedian. He just had the chops associated with that. But you know, he'd got a lot of stuff going on, like a lot of these comedian folks have going on. They've got a lot of stuff going on. and he was exploring a lot of that stuff. I loved his, he was very easy to make music with. That was the real fun that I got out of working on the Best Damn Podcast Ever, was I got the opportunity to make music with these guys, where they weren't doing anything. They were just saying words on a podcast, and I was sampling the words on the podcast and making music out of it at the end, which was really fun. I'd love to do that again. I mean, if I look at my podcast, Model Rail Radio obviously has my music. Biota Live was my music, and through a variety of different styles. In fact, when I found a track by Birdie Nam Nam that I liked, I created a Biota Live Birdie Nam Nam mix. The Beastie Boys, I created Beastie Boys, Biota Live intros and things like that. So yeah, this music part of it is just really critical. I wish people would go back into the Best Damn Podcast Ever and just look at the end music of the shows that I had some ability to contribute to, because it was just great fun. In fact, I think my last recording, I actually recorded one of the previous recordings, but me doing Blake Buck's vocals, which was an homage to the whole thing. But if you know about the Best Damn Podcast Ever and you're on this video, so much the better. You know so much history here. And hopefully maybe you might be an Attic Aficionados devotee. If you're an Attic Aficionados devotee and you've never dug back into the Best Damn Podcast Ever, this is why this video is here, is to say, whatever history you think, there's an older history and there's a more detailed, elaborate history. I just wanted to put a little aspect of that out there. Because I think if the legacy of the Best Damn Podcast Ever, was if Attic Aficionados people picked up the Best Damn Podcast Ever, they would at least see this essence of Barbalet kind of carry through in some regard. Anyway, Tom Barbalet here in Las Vegas, Nevada, doing a reminiscing video, which is basically the format that I'm asked to. I have other YouTube channels which I'm doing reminiscing videos on, but I thought I'd record this one associated with Best Damn Podcast Ever and Attic Aficionados. Anyway, Tom Barbalet in Las Vegas, Nevada, signing out.